Getting the heart away, Southern T. Back with another EP. And y'all do your boy a favor as you roll on in. Y'all, I want to make sure y'all can hear me. Y'all do your boy a favor. Yeah, make sure. Y'all do your boy a favor as you roll on in. Y'all smash that like button for your boy. Whether you're here for a good time or a long time, if you could, do your brother a favor. Smash that like button for your boy. You know what I mean? Today, I just want to, rap for a second. Just for a second. Now, I want to go back to something. It was a minute ago. You know what I mean? But I want to go back to something, and I thoroughly remember Devin Haney and Javante Tank Davis having a dispute on Twitter. You know what I mean? Back and forth was good. Shout out to my brother Just Do. Appreciate you sliding through this joint. Glad you can make it. Shout out brother Do. TWT in the building. Drop the flames for brother Do. TWT business. Appreciate you sliding through this joint, Just. Glad you make it. But yeah, I want to read this article. Now, this article is from July 23rd, 2022, right? So it wasn't that long ago. July 23rd, 2022. Wasn't that long ago, you know what I mean? Devin Haney fought what, June 5th, June 6th, or whatever day. I think it was something like that, June 5th, June 6th, right? So this article is from, July 22nd. Let's read the article. It says Javante Davis fired back at Devin Haney on Monday, calling him an email champ in response to Haney's recent comments about Davis never fighting anybody of note. So Javante Tank Davis, took to Twitter and he called Devin Haney the email champ because Devin Haney said Javante Tank Davis ain't for nobody, worth talking about, right? So Javante Davis called Devin Haney the email champ. I'm gonna continue reading. It said Haney, the WBC lightweight champion, said he didn't know why Davis is bothering to leave Mayweather promotion after his fight this Saturday with Rolly Romero, because if he's not going to fight anyone, he should just stay loyal to Mayweather because, Floyd Mayweather and them, not putting him in no fights anyway. That's what Devin Haney was alluding to. This caused a stir up for a second. You know what I mean? It caused a stir up for a second. I'm not really sure. Like people, forgot about it or whatnot. You know what I mean? But it caused a stir up for a second. This is exactly what Tank Davis, said. This is the Tank Davis tweet. You know what I mean? Word for word. He said, he's an email champ. He's fighting because somebody mailed him the belt and he was talking crazy. If you win, let's make this fight happen. Since you want to talk crazy, I want to fight you if you win. Devin Haney. That's what Tank Davis tweeted out to Devin Haney. He tweeted that actually he said that on the Last Stand podcast with Brian Custer. My bad. He didn't tweet that. He said that on he said that to Brian Custer. Cause I'm looking at the article. This is Sports Keita. You know what I mean? Leandro Marco. You know what I mean? He said this on Brian Custer. It says right here. It said on the last, it says Last Stand podcast, which is Brian Custer show. But Tank Davis said he's the email champ. He's fighting because somebody mailed him the belt. He's talking about Devin Haney. He said, and he was talking crazy. If you win, let's make the fight happen. Since you want to talk crazy, I want to fight you if you win, Devin Haney. Now, I'm going to continue to read the article, right? He said the two lightweights have been involved in the war of wars for quite some time now, which will likely continue until they eventually score off in the ring. Davis is eyeing another defense of his title this Saturday. He's facing off against Rolly Romero. After the fight, Tank is said to part ways with Floyd Mayweather. We know he didn't. He stayed with him. We know he ended up staying with Floyd Mayweather. You know what I mean? He ended up staying with him, right? Haney, on the other hand, faces a tough challenge in George Kambosos June 5th. The Purple look to put their belts on the line for title unification in Melbourne, Australia. But I wanted to read this article, for a reason. when Devin Haney, after his fight with George Kambosos in the fight in which Devin Haney became undisputed, Devin Haney hit it. He hit it Tank Davis, and he was like, "Yo, I want Tank Davis fight next. I want to make it happen." You know what I mean? And everybody had, a bit of a problem with what Devin Haney, had to say. And I myself, I was looking furious back. Could y'all do your boy a favor? Could y'all smash that like button? Whether y'all here for a good or a long time. You know what I mean? I was looking furious by myself because I was like, man, those guys are always going back and forth. You know what I mean? They not doing nothing, that they wouldn't normally do, Tank and Devin Haney. But everybody has seemed to take a problem with it. I even got the Devin Haney, clout chasing talks and whatnot. People even calling me, like Devin Haney fanboy because I'm saying like, they saying, I'm being inconsistent because I can't defend, the clout chasing. And I'm confused because I know that I saw, I know I seen these guys over the years, go back and forth all the time. Like they always do that. That's normal. That's what they do. But I know I had just recently seen these guys have a dispute. You know what I mean? And I know if I wasn't mistaken, I heard or I seen, I think he did. I think I saw the tweet, you know what I mean? Like on ESPN or, like on one of those Twitter media sites, from Tank Davis, from the actual Brian Custer. That's why I thought that he tweeted it. You know what I mean? So he said it on Brian Custer, you know what I mean? And I saw it, in ink, being reported around. So I know that I wasn't tripping when I said, but Tank Davis is the one that said that he wants to fight, Devin Haney next. You know what I mean? So I didn't see a problem with Devin Haney, you know what I mean, calling out Tank Davis after the fight because Tank Davis had called Devin Haney out literally July. I guess that would be July 21st where they had this conversation because this article dropped July. The whole time I'm thinking my camera on this crazy. This article must have happened. This must have happened. This must have. So this must have happened July 21st because this article came out July 22nd, right? So I knew I had seen them on social media, having their dispute, you know what I mean? Because having their dispute because I know David Haney had not too long ago, like before that time where Tank Davis called him the email champ. I know David Haney had said that, it was speculation that Tank Davis was about to leave, you know what I mean, the money team, right? And David Haney was like, well, shit, he might as well stay with the money team, because he ain't getting no fights anyway. You know what I mean? He might as well stay with him if he ain't gonna fight nobody. So Tank Davis took the Brian Custer, right? And he said, I want David Haney next. Now, I'm confused of how people, took offense to when Devin Haney called out Tank Davis after the fact, right? When Tank Davis had called out Devin Haney before the fact, right? But let's continue to where we at now. Now, my thing is everybody want to put this fight to bed, because the play that they're trying to make happen, right, is the play that Bob Arum wants, Devin Haney is signed to ESPN, right? So what Bob Arum wants to happen is, right, he get Lomachenko to come back, fight Devin Haney in his return fight early next year, right? He get Lomachenko to come back in October, and then he fight Devin Haney early next year after his return fight, right? So Devin Haney got his obligation to George Kambosos, which George Kambosos' side, did, get their stuff together. They finally got their stuff together, and that fight is official now. You know what I mean? They got the building, they got the date, so that fight will take place. So Devin Haney has to fight George Kambosos, and Bob Arum wants him to fight Lomachenko afterwards. But Bob Arum also said that I intend for, Devin Haney to fight Lomachenko. And the reason Bob Arum has to say he intends, right, is because there is a chance, right, that if there is a chance, and this is what I'm telling y'all now, right, there is a chance that if Gervonta Tank Davis wants to press forward, with his WBA mandatory, because he is the WBA mandatory for Devin Haney's, 135 WBA belt, which is, very well could be put into play by Tank Davis if he so chooses to. So when Devin Haney and Tank Davis, you know what I mean, they kind of hitting at each other right now. It's not so far fetched, and it very well could happen a lot sooner than people really know. You know what I mean? For one, you know what I mean, you got Gervonta Tank Davis, and I just read you the article. It's on Brian Custer right now. You had Gervonta Tank Davis literally calling out Devin Haney before his fight with George Kambosos. Before his fight with George Kambosos, Gervonta Tank Davis said on Brian Custer that he wanted to fight Devin Haney next. He said, since you're doing all that talking about me staying with Mayweather Promotions, and I was good, DP Rocker. Appreciate you sliding through this John TWT in the building. He said, since you're doing all this talking, what's good, DP? Appreciate you sliding through this, John. Glad you can make it. Tank Davis basically said in this article, right, since Devin Haney doing all this talking about me being with Mayweather Promotions and not fighting nobody, after your next fight with George Kambosos, I want to fight you. I want to fight you, Devin Haney. Tank Davis straight up said that. So it makes sense, for Devin Haney, which I was so confused why everybody was saying Devin Haney was clout chasing, right? Because Bobby Arum wanted him to do this and Bobby Arum wanted him to do that. When Tank Davis is the one that hit it, Devin Haney, about fight next. So understand that with Tank Davis actually being the WBA mandatory, what's good, Charles? Appreciate you sliding through this junk, Charles. Glad you can make it, pimp. Glad you can make it. Y'all do your boy a favor. Y'all smash that like button for your boy, whether you here for a good time or a long time. Greatly appreciate it. But let's really think about it for a second. My guy DP Rocker said Floyd got to let it happen though. Let's really think about it for a second, DP. Let's really think about it for a second, big homie. So Tank Davis got this golden ticket. This golden ticket that Tank Davis got right now, right? This golden ticket is the WBA, mandatory spot. He could push he don't gotta, how Bud Day, how Terrence Crawford told Sean Porter to activate his mandatory when Sean Porter was trying to get a fight with him early. Tank Davis really can't do that because he already been dubbed the mandatory. So Tank Davis very well can push towards negotiation, right? To get his mandatory shot at Devin Haney at any time he so chooses. He could do that at any time he so chooses. So Bob Arum is intended, to make Lomachenko versus Devin Haney. But if Tank Davis forces his mandatory, now Tank Davis will probably have to take a 70-30 split. But because it's the WBA and Tank Davis has already been doing business with the WBA for a minute, he's on the PBC side. I don't know if you know, but the WBO, that's ESPN and Top Ranks belt. The WBC, that's Mauricio Suleiman's belt. He controls what goes on with that belt. And the WBA, that's the PBC belt. If you didn't know, now you know. You know what I mean? So Tank Davis has been the WBA regular champ, the WBA real champ, the WBA regular champ in a multitude of divisions. He's already, under that sanctioning body. He's been under that banner, for most of his career. You know what I mean? So he already has a relationship with those people. So if he decides to force that mandatory, then Devin Haney indeed has to negotiate with Tank Davis because Lomachenko doesn't have a belt. So no matter what Bob Arum says, either Devin Haney will have to drop that WBA belt or Devin Haney will have to actually negotiate with Tank Davis. So Tank Davis actually does control what happens with Devin Haney and Lomachenko in assists. People are so quick to write off the fact that, he got to fight Lomachenko next. Yeah, Bob Arum wants him to fight Lomachenko next. But if you really listen to what Bob Arum said, I intend to make Devin Haney versus Lomachenko. And I'm not saying that it's not going to happen because it very well could. But if that fight happened, it's because Tank Davis let it happen. And what I'm hearing, I just want to bring, a little attention to, the fact that people were saying that Devin Haney was clout chasing Tank in a sense because he had a certain number of fights before. You know what I mean? What I'm saying here is if Gervonta Tank Davis really wants to, like he said he wanted to, because, Tank did say that he want to fight, Devin Haney next. I just read you the exact quote. He said it on Brian Custer. You know what I mean? Go watch Tank Davis on Brian Custer, in July. It had to be the July episode, right? So go watch Tank Davis on Brian Custer You know what I mean? And tell me if you remember. You know what I mean? It's around the time when Devin Haney had, it's around the time when Tank Davis was beefing with Floyd Mayweather about leaving TMT or not, when they had that whole rift. And then Devin Haney was like, well, shit, you don't fight nobody no way. So if you ain't going to fight nobody, you might as well stay with him because you already over there not fighting nobody. You know what I mean? And then Tank Davis fired back with, well, shit, I want to fight you next after your fight. You know what I mean? So it's Tank Davis the one who put this idea in the air that, they will fight next. It was Tank Davis who said that he wanted to fight Devin Haney next after his George Kambosos fight. And after the George Kambosos fight, Devin Haney, went straight to calling Tank Davis out. You know what I mean? Because that's what they do. They always go back and forth. They had a little risk. And two, because Tank Davis had just said that he wanted to fight him next. And three, because Tank Davis very well do have the power to fight Devin Haney next if he wants to. He very well can push that WBA mandatory, ticket and fight Devin Haney next. He won't be allowed to fight Lomachenko unless Bob Arum want to give up that WBA belt. Now, Bob Arum don't really care about Devin Haney having that WBA belt. So I can see in a way where Bob Arum tries to make, Devin Haney fight Lomachenko. But my mind is they're not going to, drop that WBA belt. And if Tank Davis pushes that mandatory like he very well could, they could get that fight next. You know what I mean? Tank Davis controls whether he fights Lomachenko next. And they just, the matter of, what's going on. He's already been called the mandatory. He's already been dubbed the mandatory by the WBA. He can force negotiations on Devin Haney, to have a fight. And if he decides to do that, then Bob Arum will have no choice but to let Devin Haney do it, or Devin Haney will have to drop his belt. You know what I mean? But I was just confused as to how, people got, Devin Haney was clout chasing and whatnot. Like, they don't always, have these back and forths and have these rifts, these two fighters. They've been doing this for a minute. It was just them doing what they always been doing. Except this time, you know what I mean? They had recent beef, just in July. Devin Haney fought June 5th, 6th, and Tank Davis went on Brian Custer, around July 20-something, according to the interview and the statement. That's when he went on Brian Custer. So it was fresh. So Devin Haney probably was fighting Lomachenko, thinking about what Tank Davis was saying the whole time, that he wanted to fight him next. What this Southern Tea right here is about, and I ain't gonna keep y'all too long because I'm gonna come on, at 1:00, with something else, and we gonna do our stream. I want to talk about Teofimo Lopez and Ocampo and Ryan Garcia calling out Teofimo, and how Ryan Garcia literally just ducked, and how Oscar De La Hoya said that they passed Ryan Garcia, and now they focused on, Teofimo Lopez. But I just want to bring this to light. I'm gonna read the comments, one more time. This is what Tank Davis said on Brian Custer. He said this on Brian Custer, the Last Stand podcast. So you could go back, you can check Tank Davis' Last Stand podcast, and you can see where, Gervonta Tank Davis actually did call out Devin Haney before Devin Haney's fight with George Kambosos about fighting him next. So when Devin Haney finished his fight with George Kambosos, he obliged Tank Davis, and everybody went crazy on Devin Haney, and I was a little confused as to why. You know what I mean? So, I just want to put context, around that situation so everybody can get filled in on exactly, what's really going on. Gervonta Tank Davis fired back at Devin Haney on Monday, calling him an email champ in a response to Haney's comments about Davis never fighting anybody. Devin Haney, had went on $1 million worth of game, if I'm not mistaken, and he told everybody that, well, I think that was after, but Devin Haney told everybody that shit, if Tank Davis, he ain't fighting nobody no way, so he might as well stay with Mayweather Promotions. That's around the time where Gervonta Davis and Mayweather Promotions was having that beef, or they was having, a promotion scheme or whatever was going on. But that's around the time all them rumors was floating around that Tank Davis would be leaving TMT. He ended up, not leaving and whatnot. You know what I mean? But Devin Haney was saying, like, bro, if you go, you ain't fighting nobody no way, right? You ain't fighting nobody no way, so you might as well stay with Floyd Mayweather and the money team because, they not putting you in the ring with nobody and you well protected over there. That was around this time. And this is the article. This article is from July 23rd, 2022. Gervonta Tank Davis fired back at Devin Haney on Monday, calling him an email champ in response to Haney recent comments about Davis never fighting anybody of note. Haney, the WBC lightweight champion, said he didn't know why David is bothering to leave Mayweather Promotions after his fight this Saturday with Rolly Romero because he's not going to fight anyone anyway. He should stay loyal to Mayweather Promotions. This is what Tank Davis had to say in response to Devin Haney on Brian Custer's podcast. Tank Davis said he's the email champ. He's fighting because somebody mailed him the belt, and he talking crazy. If you win, let's make the fight happen since you want to talk crazy. I want to fight you if you win, Devin Haney. I want to fight you next. That's what Gervonta Tank Davis had to say to Devin Haney, and that's why, I was a little confused as what the problem was, with Devin Haney finishing his fight with George Kambosos and then fighting Gervonta Tank Davis out. And then people will say, well, it's cloud chasing because you got to fight Kambosos and Lomachenko next. Now, the thing with George Kambosos was it was on Top Rank and Devin Haney's side to put on the first fight. That's why he had to fight that fight. It's on George Kambosos, Pro Bellum, and Richard Schaefer to put on the second fight. So that's why Devin Haney was saying that I may not have to fight a second fight with them if they can't get an arena and the money behind them to put on the second fight. So I very well could be open to fighting Tank Davis. Now, George Kambosos and his side ended up getting the arena and the date and everything locked in. So he do have to fight George Kambosos, but there's still a silver lining in all this. Tank Davis is the WBA regular champion. The WBA has already called Tank Davis as the mandatory to Devin Haney's WBA super belt. So at any point, Gervonta Tank Davis can force Devin Haney into a negotiation to fight for his WBA strap. Then people say, well, Bob Arum wants Lomachenko to fight Devin Haney, at the beginning of next year after Lomachenko's comeback fight in October. Yes, I agree with you. What's good, Josh Sanders? Appreciate you sliding through. Yes, I agree with you. That is the fight that Bob Arum wants. But if you really listen to what Bob Arum said, Bob Arum stated that he intends to make Lomachenko and Devin Haney at the start of January. At the start of the year in 2023, January sometime. He said he intends to do that. The reason he got to use the word intend is because he knows there's that slight chance that the WBA and their mandatory could step in and they could cause a rift in what's going on. What's good, BNB Boxing News? Appreciate you sliding through this, John. Glad you can make it. He know that there is a slight chance that if Gervonta Tank Davis and the WBA wanted to, they could step in and they could get their hands on that Devin Haney fight first. Southern T, what you mean they can get their hands on that Devin Haney fight first? Well, by the rules, yes, Devin Haney is signed to Top Rank. So Bob Arum could force him to fight Lomachenko, but he will have to drop the WBA belt, and that will automatically make Gervonta Tank Davis the WBA champion, right? But in actuality, Devin Haney is not going to drop his WBA belt just to fight Lomachenko. Contractually obligated, he will have to fight Gervonta Tank Davis because he is the mandatory. Bob Arum can't do nothing but wait his turn if Tank Davis put those papers out and say, I'm the mandatory through the WBA, we got to go. That don't in breach on his contract with Bob Arum. So he will be able to fight that fight with Gervonta Tank Davis if Gervonta Tank Davis pushes his WBA mandatory, which he already is. You get what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is if Tank Davis really wants to fight Devin Haney, he could call Devin Haney's bluff. Because Devin Haney, called him out after his fight with George Kambosos in response to what Gervonta Tank Davis said. He's an email champ. He's fighting because somebody mailed him the belt, and he was talking crazy. If you win, let's make the fight happen. Since you want to talk crazy, I want to fight you if you win, Devin Haney. That's what Tank Davis said on the Brian Custer podcast. So y'all, if y'all go check out the Brian Custer podcast, you will hear Tank Davis actually say that. And so you'll understand more why Devin Haney, said what he said after his fight with George Kambosos. And if you dig deeper into it, yes, at this point he does have to fight George Kambosos again, right? But after this fight, contractually, mandatory, trumps a regular or voluntary. Tank Davis will be the mandatory to Lomachenko's voluntary. Lomachenko will be a voluntary, even though they both are top rank. You know what I mean? They both are top rank. Hustler Holmes, and you can, Hustler Holmes. And you can, my boy. You can. Shout out my guy, Hustler Holmes. You can, brody. You can. This the boxing where everybody, this content, this just me. This ain't nothing special. This just me, knowing the rules and the bylaws and knowing the situations and what's going on. and being so close to a situation and paying attention to everything that's going on, you know what I mean? Not just particularly one side, or not just being so quick, to jump on one fighter or what. So what? Because I don't have a horse in either of these races. But it is what it is. I call things consistently. I'm just breaking down what exactly happened between Tank and Devin, what led up to all this, and what very well could happen in the future. So yes, he does have to fight George Kambosos because contractually George Kambosos met his end of the deal. He got a building, he got a date. So now Devin Haney got to show up because he did his part of the deal, right? Boom. So yes, now he does have to fight him, but he had to make sure that he had a date in the venue, right? So he does have one now. So he has to fight George Kambosos next, right? That is true. But the Lomachenko fight will be considered a voluntary. Bob Arum will have no choice but to wait because, again, Tank Davis has papers from the WBA saying that he's obligated when he wants to push negotiations for Devin Haney to have to fight him through the WBA. So that is a real thing. You know what I mean? And Gervonta Tank Davis did say that if you beat George Kambosos, I want to fight you. So that is something that I expect Gervonta Tank Davis to do. You know what I mean? This fight is a lot closer than people think, and it very well could happen within the next two fights. It could happen within the next fight. Like they both could have one fight, and then the fight very well could happen. But I think it's going to happen after these two fights for sure. If it doesn't happen in the next two fights, Tank Davis and Devin Haney, then it's never going to happen because Devin Haney eventually is going to go up to 140. But there is a window for this fight to happen. There is a two-fight window right now for Devin Haney versus Tank Davis. And I think people, kind of missing it a little bit. But if we really pay attention to what's going on and what they're saying, these guys aren't capping. These guys understand, how the WBA work and how the sanction bodies work. But I ain't going to hold y'all up too long in here. I ain't going to hold y'all up too long because I am going to go live a little bit later. I want to be in here, 30 minutes because y'all know I like round numbers. But, yeah, I want y'all to play this back, really try to understand what I was saying. You know what I mean? This fight very well could happen. It's a lot closer than you think if you really put the pieces and the breadcrumbs together. What I want to do is just come here, lay the stuff out on the table and let, the people do as they may with it again. I'm going to read the comment from Gervonta Tank Davis. I'm going to put it all into context, the article. We all remember around the time when Gervonta Tank Davis and Floyd Mayweather was having their rift. Gervonta Tank Davis was threatening to leave the money team. Devin Haney, had something to say about it. Devin Haney said, what you leaving the money team for? Because you're not fighting nobody anyway. Floyd them keeping you, on their safe path. So you might as well stay over there if you not go fight nobody. Gervonta Tank Davis was asked about that comment by Brian Custer on the Last Stand podcast, and this is what Tank Davis had to say. Devin Haney, he's an email champ. He's fighting because somebody mailed him the belt, and he was talking crazy. If you win, let's make the fight happen. Since you want to talk crazy, I want to fight you if you win, Devin Haney. That's what Tank Davis said to Devin Haney. Devin Haney, after his fight with George Kambosos, said, I want to fight Tank Davis next. I want to fight Tank Davis next. He answered Tank Davis's call. Now, actually it's on Tank Davis, to actually make this fight happen, make this thing happen. It will be on Tank Davis, to make this fight happen. Southern T. Devin Haney about to fight Kambosos. Yes, he is about to fight Kambosos. He's about to fight Kambosos in October, right? Boom. But after that, Kambosos go fight Lomachenko. You heard Bob Arum say that he go fight Lomachenko. True. But Bob Arum can't get in the way of a mandatory. The only way Devin Haney will be able to fight Lomachenko if Tank Davis pushes his WBA mandatory is if he let go of the WBA belt. Then Tank Davis will become the WBA champion. And he still could, go fight Lomachenko and then keep his belts and come back and fight Tank Davis by himself. You know what I mean? That could happen. He could drop the WBA, fight Lomachenko for history, get the Lomachenko name on his resume, come back and fight Tank Davis, for undisputed again, two-time undisputed. Yeah, he very well could do that. You know what I mean? But let's just shoot straight for a second, right? Let's just say that, Tank Davis do force the WBA, and contractually he got Tank Davis and WBA got one up on Bob Arum because he will have to allow that fight to happen if he want his champion to keep his undisputed belts for that fight with Lomachenko, right? You know what I mean? So let's just say that that happens, he will have to do that because Tank Davis will have papers saying from the WBA that, yeah, I'm next in line to fight Devin Haney. So Devin Haney would indeed have to fight Tank Davis before Lomachenko. You know what I mean? And this is just streaming from Tank Davis, saying that he wanted to fight Devin Haney next after his fight with George Kambosos on the Brian Custer show. Devin Haney was just answering the bell, and now it's really on Tank Davis to answer the bell. But there is a silver lining. If Tank Davis decides to, fight Michelle Rivera instead of fighting Tank Davis, I won't consider that a duck at all because Rivera is the mandatory for Tank Davis's belt. Tank Davis indeed can't fight anybody but Michelle Rivera or Devin Haney at this point if he wants to keep himself in the WBA sweepstakes. You know what I mean? So Tank Davis has to fight Rivera or Tank Davis has to fight Devin Haney or he loses his WBA regular belt. You know what I mean? I will understand him, letting go his mandatory spot to fight a Ryan Garcia. That's a big money fight, right? Cool. But outside of you getting a big money fight, you have to fight Rivera or Devin Haney for you to keep your position in the WBA. Now it's up to Tank to make a decision on what he's going to do. He very well can push for that Devin Haney fight next after George Kambosos through the WBA. That's the thing. But if he don't, right, he could fight Rivera in the meantime, let Devin Haney fight Lomachenko, and then they could fight, you know what I mean, on the back end. You know what I mean, type deal. But they very well can fight within the next two fights. It's a real possibility that this fight could be going down. But that's all I got. So I ain't going to keep y'all here too long. It's getting the harder way certainty. This ain't the past. This ain't the future, but this the present. That's how we rocking. And I'm out. Love. Make sure y'all, matter of fact, before I get up out of here, before